All right. So, all right. So back for another episode. This is, I think, episode 14. And today we're going to be talking about Robert Rodriguez back with his Max. Thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I feel like I'm on a talk show.
It's something like, but still like me just sort of fucking around. Well, us fucking around.
Oh, you know what's funny is I think this is the first time that I haven't used my microphone. Hold on, real quick. Let me get it so I can.
Oh, go for it, man.
Of course, it's like tangled with 8 other different things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Testing.
Do I sound better now?
All right, you sound like a voiceover narration, like, just full on.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so let's get started.
All right, yeah. So we're talking about Robert Rodriguez, and I think for both of us, I would say he's like one of our favorite filmmakers, even though he probably hasn't made like some of our favorite movies. I think it's like the best. It's probably like it's a compliment, but a bit of a backhanded compliment at the same time, because like I like him more as a person than the actual movies that he makes. Like I think as a person, he's fucking amazing.
And you know what? That's fair. I think for me, yes, I would agree with that to an extent, but obviously everybody loves Spy Kids. Like, are you kidding me? And El Mariachi is like, something to marvel at because of the story behind it. The film itself, I will say, is very fun to watch. It's like a very fun watch. I feel like at the time, the Sundance audiences, like not every film was like this, but I feel like for a lot of the indie film scene, a lot of films tend to drag on or be like very dramatic or experimental. So sometimes, audiences are unsure of what to do with this information. And I guess the point of that is like, oh, you should interpret it as art and like appreciate it for what it is and be like, this film made me think. But for his fucking movie, can you imagine like this Spanish mob movie where like there's like gunfire and like all the like just and like action and like and the story actually weaves together really, really well. I can't imagine what audiences back then thought of that thing. They went nuts.
So. And you brought up the indie scene, and this was one of the like real propellers of like the indie movement in the 90s, because it came out the same year as Reservoir Dogs. And so like this film and then like Reservoir Dogs and I think it was 1989 was Sex, Lies, and Videotapes. These were like 3 instrumental films where like you don't like need like a big Hollywood backing to kind of get your movie made, particularly with this film, because this is a guy that just like, I'm just gonna make my own movie, and he had no intention of making it to Sundance. It was just like I'm just gonna make a movie and try to get it sold to the home video market. He had a very like grounded idea of what he planned to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that it's so interesting. Like that number, $7,000 as like a budget, has stuck with me because, first off, he has like that documentary now, or like had that documentary. I know that only like 1 season of it was made, or no, it was a reality TV thing. But basically it was like Rebel Without a Crew, the series, and it was like, he gave, what was it, like 4 or 5 filmmakers $7,000 and said, okay, here's all you have, go shoot your movie. I just think that's so interesting, and especially because the $7,000 was mostly spent on the actual film, like the
35 millimeter film.
Everything is shot in digital now. Like if he made the same movie on digital, it would be for several $100s probably.
From what I gather, like the price would have been about $300. Like I'm speculating, but that's probably like from what I understand, like, and it's mostly going towards food for the crew and cast.
Right. Exactly. You know, like there's not a whole lot that you actually have to do in terms of money these days. You know, you can, as if you have the ambition, you will make it work. One of his like core things was, if you, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but when you put yourself in a corner, when you have limits, that's when creativity flourishes, you know.
Mhm.
I don't want half this podcast to just be me like reiterating everything that he's ever said, but I've listened to a few like talks that he's given at like film
Mhm.
schools and like podcasts and whatever. So I have a good grasp of like how he likes to make movies. And I just think it's so admirable to not wait, to just kind of go with whatever resources you have, and just kind of see what comes out of it, because some of the best like turns of the movie are when you are pushed to your limits because you can't do X, Y, and Z because you don't have enough money. So what do you
Mhm.
do instead? You know, how do you solve that problem? So he kind of answers that question with his movies, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and what I like about well, like I'm happy you brought up Rebel Without a Crew, because I felt like that was a good bonding moment for us. We
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, because we read the book and saw the movie, but like that book was also influential in the sense of got other movies made, or like possible to get made. Like Clerks wasn't like semi inspired by like to get made by El Mariachi, I believe, because Kevin Smith, in the same way as like Robert Rodriguez mentioned, like just take stock of like anything that you might have possession of, like, you know, whatever you have in your inventory. Like if you have access to a school, if you have access to a liquor store, make a movie in a school, make a movie about a liquor store. Like in Clerks, he had access to a convenience store. Let me just make a movie about that. With Swingers, Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau, when he pitched it to Doug Liman, he's just like, read this book. We can actually get this made. Like it's not impossible. And like, yeah, that made million plus dollars off like, you know, a small budget. And it's just like this movie, like, while you can't make, I would just say in terms like the visual quality of it, it wouldn't get the sort of release like nowadays. But at the time, like for what it was and how much it was made to be produced, and like again the whole story behind it, how he even got the funding for it is quite unbelievable.
True. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that like in his book he talks about how, even though the making of the movie is just as fascinating, if not more fascinating than the movie itself, he
Mhm.
actually tried to keep that hidden from the major studios because he wanted it to be picked up for the actual story and not just because it was made for this obscene low amount of money, you know. And I think
Yeah.
that itself is also very admirable, because I don't think I could be that noble. I think I would be preaching to people like, oh, I made this for only $7,000, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
I remember seeing in the book that he wrote about, he had pitched it to, I think, a Hollywood agent. He was trying to get the movie picked up and like spread to studios. He brought a trailer of the movie to his agent, and he said, wow, this is amazing. Like, how much was this to make? He said, Robert Rodriguez said $7,000. I'm like, $7,000 for the trailer? That's great. He's just like, no, $7,000 for the movie. And then like, it's just, that's where like things exploded. And I should also clarify, like, it did blow up, I think, to about 200 grand. I think after like, because they did like post-production, like sound for it. Like, so I think it did blow up to in the six figures for the post-production of it. But with just Robert Rodriguez making the film production and his initial draft where he pitched it out, that was for 7 grand.
absolutely, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because the film sounds great, you know.
Mhm.
Like I believe the gunfire. It's just so funny because the visuals are like, they're very cheesy in a fun way. Like you clearly know that like these are blanks and they're just kind of exploding squibs and whatever. But you can tell that it was a lot of fun to make.
Mhm.
Um and I especially loved the hyper reality of some of the scenes, like the
Mhm.
one with like the the kid in the door or something like that. Like that was very student filmy to me, but in like again a very fun way. Like you can tell that he had fun making this movie, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, and
And I
again,
think
it was just him and his friend. Like he shot it, but like his friend was the producer and star. So
right, exactly. You know, and that whole thing of having like a +1 on set too, like, you know,
Mhm.
obviously relying on yourself is very important, but you can't always rely on yourself. Like that's why you have a crew. So that's another thing he encourages is if you can't have a crew, you should at least have a +1. And I feel like we're each other's +1s in a way. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Mhm.
we're a good partnership. I feel like if I was to go on that series, like Rebel Without a Crew, like the reality TV show, like you would be my +1, you know?
Dude, I like honestly like that's why like I think I've made up my mind. Like I'll be back. Like we'll definitely make a film the second I get back. Like something we'll have something in the pipeline.
Yeah, even if we dish out like a stupid like hour or two worth of shooting and then it's just like, I don't know, a minute long like micro short or something. We'll figure
Mhm.
something out.
Yeah, exactly. But briefly going back, so like one thing you mentioned about El Mariachi, like trying to take creativity with limitations. One thing that comes to mind, well, is where he had the gun. It was a real gun, and they were shooting blanks. But the thing in that with the gun was that since it shot blanks, the gun would lock up, so you can only shoot one round at a time. But he wanted like a machine gun. So what he did is that he would shoot the blank and record that, but then just have it on a loop. So like it just looked like it was just keep going. So it looks like it's going like it's continuously firing. And then he would just cut back to the guys getting shot with squibs, and he would just go back to that footage. So it's a
That
clever
sounds
way.
about right.
Yeah, so it's a clever way of embracing your limitations to be able to create that sort of sequence.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like
Mhm.
I think I should probably give that a rewatch just because I haven't seen it for maybe since 2019, like
Mhm.
since I was in my last apartment. So I I can vaguely remember that there were a lot of cutaways to guys getting hit and like the squibs exploding. So I do think that yes, he probably used that as like filler. Um, but it's interesting that you bring up like specific sequences with Robert Rodriguez because something I found, and we'll talk about this later too, is you know about his like more recent film Red 11 that was filmed for the same budget.
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay. I have a lot to say about that because I saw the movie and then I saw the making of. Um, but essentially, he talked about how his process on set is thinking like an editor, which I absolutely admire because that is
Mhm.
something that I find myself doing as well. Is he's literally watching the movie as the movie is being made. Even when he's writing the script, he says, okay, literally just close your eyes and watch the movie in your head. What do you see? Now put that on paper, you know, or at least put it in an outline or something. Obviously, putting things on a script page is a little harder, but he didn't even write an original script for El Mariachi. He just did it, you know, like he put an outline. He's like, okay, we need to shoot this, and this from these angles. Let's go. He did the same thing for Red 11, you know, so the whole thing with Robert is every time he shoots a shot, he knows exactly what needs to be got, and then he doesn't shoot a single take over that, you know, versus like let's say a set between you and me, and probably most directors out there, we kind of go, okay, that was definitely the best take. Let's get one more for safety. He doesn't even do that sometimes. Like, you know, he'll just shoot what he needs to get. When he knows that he's got it, he moves immediately on to the next shot. Which is just it's mind-blowing to me. Like that somebody's brain can think like that, you know?
Mhm. Like I could definitely get the efficiency of that, especially like when you're on, say, on like El Mariachi during the time when like you're very you have to be conscientious about the film, like the amount of money you're spending on film. And while like that can still carry over with like time and resources today, I feel like I like that bit of security, just getting that one more take. And the thing is that I feel like for many of our films, we usually use like one of the last takes. I feel like that's pretty common with us, or at least like we have like a little blip that we use. Yeah. So like I totally like admire that, and very few directors are like that. Like Alfred Hitchcock was like that. He was notorious for just like only shooting 2 or 3 takes and then just moving on.
Right.
Yeah. But
And you know what, like being resourceful, absolutely, yeah, but there is something kind of unlimiting but also a little bit damaging about the digital world is, yes, you do need to, I don't know, you're less conscious about what you're getting just because you know that you can get pretty much an unlimited amount of it. As long as your SD card is big enough, you can get as many takes as you want, you know. Obviously that starts stacking up when you have the bigger cameras, but then you just get bigger SD cards, you know. So I think that's interesting too, is what if we shot a movie, and like maybe to any other filmmakers that are listening to this podcast right now, all 1 or 2 of them, it might be interesting to challenge yourself to shoot a movie but only do like maximum 2 takes. Because what does that do? It forces you to really think about what you're getting in frame, what you're shooting, and what is actually like what the actors are going to be doing. Like you need to walk through that shit before you press record, because you only get 2 times to do it. You know, like that would be cool. I feel like you and I could shoot a movie like that. I wonder what that would do.
Yeah, or even do like a District 9 challenge. Like what I mean by that is in District 9, from what I understand, well, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. In District 9, I think they had an editor on set editing the movie while they were shooting it. But the reason they had to do that is because I think they only had 1 or 2 memory cards while they were shooting it. And I think they were only like 16 gigs. And this is on the Red 1. So they would maybe get like maybe 15 to 20 minutes of footage, and then they have to reload and recharge, because they would have to like, okay, we got our 20 minutes of footage. We need to plug the next one in. We have to dump that footage to the editor, get that uploaded, and then he's got to try to edit as we go, try to figure out what coverage that we need left while we're also shooting this other, like the rest of the 20 minutes on this other card. So like just kind of giving yourself that limitation, not having like maybe a 1 terabyte SD card, maybe just do something where it's like a 32 gig SD card, shoot on 1080, and then like just see what you can work with that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like I think the takeaway for this for filmmakers and artists in general is you should, how do I say this? Purposefully put limitations on yourself just to see what happens. Because in the words of Robert Rodriguez, not maybe word for word, but creativity flourishes when limitations are set on someone, you know, on their mind and on their process. You know, if they do things a certain way, challenge yourself to do them a different way, and don't let yourself fall into this comfortable space, because your films will ultimately wind up being much more dynamic in the process. And I do think that that's something that Robert Rodriguez specifically stresses.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it also allows it to be like, and I also have to praise like how he like is very set on making good quality. And an example what I mean by this is just he doesn't always go out into much variety. He's very like tangible. Like when he does something, he wants to make sure it's good. And what I mean by that is I remember seeing him on a Netflix show called The Chef Show. It's with Jon Favreau and Roy Choi. It's kind of like their like pseudo-esque sequel of Chef. And Robert Rodriguez was a guest. They also had like Sam Raimi and like and like Russo brothers, but like Robert Rodriguez was one of the guests, and he was making pizza. And that was a big thing that he was like that he does for his guests. Just like, you know, he makes pizza, like, you know, sometimes like some sort of Mexican dish, like fajitas, tacos. But what he stresses is if you don't know how to cook, you can learn, but don't focus on trying to make every sort of dish or cuisine. focus on making 3 dishes really well. So it just, you don't have to learn how to make like, you know, cakes. Like if you want to, cool, but like, you don't have to try to learn how to make cakes. You don't have to learn how to make potatoes from scratch, steak, pizza. Like, don't try to focus on all of it. Just like focus on 3 things and make it well. So I think for his, it was like, I think it was like tacos, or I can't really remember exactly. It was like something like that, pizza, and then chocolate. That was like his 3. So it's like something like very tangible. He was totally disinterested in like trying to like push himself with variety. He was interested in pushing himself to do something like those 3 things really, really well. So like taking chocolate classes, like practicing making pizzas every day. So he was just very focused in making that, and had a very tangible idea of how to get better at it. I think is another thing that he's been very good at.
That's interesting. Yeah. I haven't seen this, but it kind of makes me want to watch it now. I feel like I'm definitely on a Robert Rodriguez kick right now. You know, even if my movies are unlike anything that I want to shoot, his style of directing and his style of creating is something that I absolutely want to aspire towards. You know, like you can make any student feature with his spunk, you know what I mean? Like with his methods. So yeah, I feel like a lot of this talk is going to be about his methods more than his actual movies. But
yeah, I mean, like it's just, I feel like the movies we're gonna end up talking about are gonna end up like in the nostalgia factor, because like we've talked about El Mariachi, but that was something like we saw in our late teens, early 20s. But it was something that we did growing up was probably Spy Kids. And I don't know about you, Spy Kids, like I had it on rewatch, I had it on VHS, and it would just play on a loop.
Dude, it's interesting. You know, in typical Max fashion, I'm going to share just a tiny bit of an origin story of how I started like seeing Spy Kids. I had this weird tradition of catching movies in like the middle of Act 2. You know, it was like I would always start watching halfway through, but it would only take me like a few minutes to get invested, and then I was like, okay, I got to watch the rest of this. So I think my parents were flipping through channels and Spy Kids was on like TV and on one of the channels. And I don't know why. I was obsessed with flying. Like ever since I had seen like Superman and Peter Pan, I was like, this is so cool. I like as a kid that there was nothing I wanted more than to fly. And my parents happened to flip the channel onto the scene in Spy Kids where they're using the jetpacks to get away from the thumbs. So I was immediately like, oh my gosh, they're flying. Like, this is so cool. And I thought it was so interesting because this was the first time I had seen anything with a jetpack. I didn't know that was like a way you could fly. I thought you needed like magical dust or superpowers, you know, but no, you can like fly with technological advances, you know, albeit like the dopiest technology I've ever seen because it's a kid's movie. But I was so invested in that. And like, I needed nothing more. I was like, okay, I'm watching the rest of this movie. So I think it took me like a year or 2 before I finally saw the full movie. But yeah. And then obviously like the Spy Kids franchise just fucking blew up. I looked up the dates of when they were made. I think the original Spy Kids was 98.
Was it? No, I think it's got to be later than that. I thought it was 2001.
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It was like right around the cusp of the 2000s turn.
Yeah.
For some reason, it still strikes me as a 90s film, though.
It does. I mean, but like, I mean, it's very much in that same sort of realm. I mean, early part of the 2000s. It was probably shot in 2000, so it still feels very much like a late 90s film.
Right. But I looked at the date of the creation of Spy Kids 2, the obvious sequel, and it was literally a year later. So essentially, Robert Rodriguez struck gold, and they said, okay, you need to make another one of these right now. And so that was just like, I don't know. I think that's fucking fantastic. You know, like if anything, like that's something that he can look back on his career and be like, yeah, I made that franchise. That was me. You know?
And what's also respectable is just he's also able to get other directors to be in his films that respect him. Like, do you know the villain in Spy Kids 2, Donegan Giggles? That's Mike Judge. I don't know if you know who Mike Judge is.
I don't, but obviously I know who Donegan is. Yeah.
Okay. He created Silicon Valley, like the HBO series. He helped write Beavis and Butthead. He wrote and directed Office Space, like a real comedy, like whiz. Like, I mean, Idiocracy, like Extra, just like this guy who's a director, like, you know, even though Office Space wasn't like a commercially successful film, it's probably like it's got a significant cult following throughout the years. And the fact that he's able to kind of build this sort of trust with directors and respect, even though he goes in this sort of like tongue-in-cheek sort of direction, because he has even respect of like Tarantino. Like they went up in the careers at the same time, but it's still, you're talking about one of the like our greatest living directors, or like most respected directors today.
Right. It's just crazy. Yeah. And like I remember the book that you gave me, the Rebel Without a Crew book, like that has a picture of them at Sundance together. And I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, just fucking crazy how it all like comes together. But that's really cool too. I feel like I would be one of those directors that's like, I'd pull a J.J. Abrams and I'd be like, I'd get all my buddies together and be like, hey guys, want to be in this movie with me?
Yeah. Like, and that's kind of the spirit that he embodies. And even to kind of go further, and like with Robert Rodriguez, he's also an innovator. And I don't feel like he gets enough respect for how much influence he's had on cinema. Maybe for better or worse, he helped revitalize the 3D genre with Spy Kids 3.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
It wasn't, while Avatar was the movie that popularized it in the cinema, at least kind of like Spy Kids 3D kind of helped like slowly bring it back like a little bit. It was just that little like prologue before the burst, if that makes sense. It was just like that little spark that kind of eventually blew up with Avatar.
Well, hold on. Yeah, because I can't remember when Spy Kids 3D came out, but I think Avatar was 2009, right?
Yeah, and I believe Spy Kids 3D was 2004, 2005. It was just like a subtle little prologue before Avatar came out, because it was just a total, and I'm talking about a bit of the cinema experience, like, because 3D films were still like that kind of cheesy thing that was done in like the 70s, 80s. And it's kind of becoming a kind of overdone thing now, but that was like the first film in a long time that kind of helped like sort of bring it back a little bit. But like I feel like it was specifically popularized with Avatar, but Spy Kids I think was like one of the first, I think, to kind of bring it back in the 2000s.
Right, and I think that it's interesting that you bring up the 3D aspect, because I do think that Robert Rodriguez was a pioneer in like bringing it back in like, I guess, that modern 2010s wave that we saw, especially. But it's interesting because specifically Spy Kids and Sharkboy and Lava Girl, which we haven't even talked about yet, because I think there's a polarizing thing about Sharkboy and Lava Girl. But those two movies were in 3D, but they were in the weird classic 3D where it was like the red lens and the blue lens. Versus Avatar, which I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, had the polarized glasses, which didn't have like, the different colors. It was literally just like you put on a pair of glasses and then you can see everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. And it was still like, but I remember watching the film at home, and it came with the 3D glasses and it had the red and blue. So it was just a fun experience to watch. And I remember watching with my friends when I was a kid. Absolutely. Real quick, we'll go into Sharkboy and Lava Girl in a sec, but I also want to push this. He was also a big pioneer when it came to digital cinema. He was one of the forerunners for it. The first was George Lucas. The first one was George Lucas with Attack of the Clones. But really Robert Rodriguez like helped push it as well. Like with Spy Kids, and also Sin City was a big film of his that helped push it.
Well, okay, wait. Was Spy Kids shot on digital? I don't think so.
I believe so. I think 2002 Spy Kids was shot on digital. If not, I believe Spy Kids 3 was. Yeah, I mean, it was about that same time because Attack of the Clones was the first major production that got made digitally, entirely digital. So I think it was Spy Kids 2 or 3 that had been done digital. If not, I know Sin City was, but he's been a total like forerunner, like really hyping up digital cinema at the time.
I kind of want to look it up now because it makes total sense that Spy Kids 3 is shot on digital, but Spy Kids 1 still has that like filmy aspect to it.
Maybe. I mean, like, maybe it is Spy Kids 3, but I remember it was like right around that time with Attack of the Clones is where he was like, that's where digital cinema started. It's like, this is the new direction and it's only going to get better. And and that's definitely right. I mean, maybe film can have a home, but I feel like digital has just kind of gotten to the point where like, it's kind of interchangeable now. Like it is to that point. If you are shooting on film, you can still use that as a challenge, but I feel like it's more the nostalgia aspect.
All right, you know what? I can't find it, but it does look like Spy Kids 3D was the one that was shot on digital. I would love a follow-up though. I might do some research after this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I haven't seen Sin City, but yeah, it definitely feels like he pioneered the digital age. Robert Rodriguez was never, well, I don't want to say he was never out to make money, but he definitely prioritized the craft first and whatever he needed to do to make the movie, Mm-hmm. And I just, going back to El Mariachi for a second, like that movie was never intended to be his big break. And the fact that it was is really a weird telltale sign to filmmakers. Like, it's more often than not the movie that you don't think anyone is going to like or that anyone is going to see or admire or appreciate that gets you on the map, which is fucking weird. Like, I don't know how many directors can say the same, like any like major studio directors that can be like, oh yeah, the movie that I thought that would put me on the charts was this one, but actually it was this one and it was fucking weird. I don't know, but I feel like that might happen to like you or me. We're gonna make a movie that we're just kind of like, oh, you know what, this is okay. Like, imagine we got famous off of like Roots of a Song. Like, imagine that. That's like such a lukewarm movie. Like I just feel like it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm glad we made it, but I do agree. I feel like it's a little amateurish, but like, but if that was the one, I'm like, I thought it'd be like a different one, just because I think like
exactly.
that like, because I feel like we have made better stuff than that, but I do get if there's an appeal to that. I'm just like, okay, but like, I think there's better stuff that we've done is the only thing.
And if anything, it'll encourage people to take us seriously and check us out and see like what other shit we've made. Because, obviously we've made things that are better than that. But getting off topic, what were we talking about? Spy Kids and what it was shot on?
Yeah, I think we'll look it up later. But like, I'm pretty sure Spy Kids 3D was shot on digital. Like Spy Kids 2 is up for debate. So like, we'll look it up later. But moving on, I also want to you brought up Sharkboy and Lava Girls, so like, yeah, so talk about that for a sec.
Sure. I saw it when I was probably 7, and I didn't realize how, I used this word already, but pivotal it was to my imagination. I thought it was very cool in the way that it basically was based on like an entire planet that a kid had made through his imagination and was now like real. I guess that's kind of where people have qualms with it, is that it's like, oh, was he actually dreaming, or like none of that is answered. And I feel like if you're watching it for that reason, you're watching it for the wrong reason. I think it's meant to be this like fantastical, magical thing, where, you know, not all of your questions logistically will be answered, but, you know, if you don't ask those questions to begin with and you just kind of sit back and enjoy as like a 7-year-old, then you're going to love it, you know. That being said, it's not a perfect movie. I know that for certain. The green screen effects did not age well. I think that the CGI is absolute shite, but I think that it works in terms of the I don't know, just the style of it is meant to be all like not real and like, you know, like weird. And, you know, a lot of like modern movies that have CGI, I think that's kind of the thing, is that they ease too much into trying to make it look as realistic as possible. So therefore we're nitpicking every single little thing about it. Versus if I see like a thing of goo on a Robert Rodriguez movie like come across my screen, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and I love it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my thing, is that's how I watch Sharkboy and Lava Girl now, like especially is I do it for the amusement, you know, and that's at the end of the day, that's what movies should be, in my opinion, is amusement.
Yeah, and like even then, like in addition to that, and again, I feel like we're always kind of going behind the scenes with his films. And he also made this kind of for his son, who initially had the concept for the idea. And that's kind of like cool to do. Like that's an amazing thing to do as a dad. Like making something that like building off something that your son created. Like, you know, that's kind of like, that's honestly like a very like great thing that you kind of like really value your children.
I love that you brought that up, because that was going to be my next point about this movie, is the fact that his son made the character Sharkboy and Lava Girl, and then he made it into a movie. Like that is, like you said, the coolest fucking thing a dad could do. And that is one thing that, like, if I ever have kids and they have active imaginations, I'm going to use that as a resource and make it into some kind of movie. You know, I'm still to this day fascinated by kids movies. You know, like they have such a charm to them because they're not trying so hard to appeal to adults, because kids movies you can get away with a lot more. And I don't know, I think Robert Rodriguez subconsciously also thought that, you know, like he wasn't focused on creating the best CGI. He was focused on taking his son's story and his characters that he had made and bringing it to life. He had his son, by the way, whose name is Racer Max. And I thought that that was very interesting because that was one of the first titles that you saw on the screen. So imagine like 7-year-old Max, like looking at that in the movie theater, being like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like, you know, he's like pointing. I don't know. I was fascinated by that. But yeah, he had his son Racer Max in the, what is it? Like he like casted in his living room or something like that. There's like, there's behind the scenes something about it, and he had like Taylor Lautner in the you know, in the audition room, and he did like a backflip or something, and then he left, and then he like consulted his son. He's like, what do you think about him? And he's like, he's really good. And I just like, that's so funny. Like obviously his son didn't make the final decision, but the fact that he's incorporating his family into his craft is like the coolest fucking thing ever. So yeah, I don't know. That's like really, really cool.
No, it's also interesting you brought up audition, because I have a little snippet of this. So when Josh Brolin was auditioning for No Country for Old Men, apparently, this is just what I've heard. He got like I think a few pages of the script, and he was friends with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. So he had asked them, can you shoot my audition for this film? They're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez shot it and lit it. And then Josh Brolin sent that tape to the Coen brothers. And the first thing the Coen brothers said, who lit this? Who lit your audition tape? He's just like, Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's even kind of building on like, yeah, even auditions, like he's still like a pretty awesome guy. Another thing I want to bring up, he's also a guy that'll just do an interesting experiment project, or like I don't even call it an experiment, just like something really out there. I don't know if you ever heard of this. I'm blanking on the actual liquor, but like, have you ever heard this like Louis the 18th liquor or whatever? I can't remember the actual name of it, but it's like a project that he did with John Malkovich.
No. Oh wait, no, hold on. I think I did. Is it the thing where it's like multiple directors trying to make the same movie?
No, but like we can get into that if that's possible. But like
Okay.
but like no, but this is a so he made a movie with John Malkovich, and from what I understand, it's a feature film, and it was like produced or about this like liqueur that's like it takes like 100 years to make. Like it's like a whiskey that takes 100 years to make. So what they did is that they made a film, and they're not going to release it for 100 years because that's how long it takes the whiskey to make. I'm going to look it up real quick because I can't remember the actual name of it, but like. So hold on, let me find it real quick. But yeah, but that's the intended thing. So they already made the movie, but right now it's in like a safe, and it's not going to get released for like 100 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
that's like Boyhood on steroids, you know?
Yeah, so
like the whole thing with Boyhood, like they started filming when like the kid was 6 and they ended it when he was 18. Like that's fucking crazy.
Okay, so I did find I'm looking it up right now. So the film is called 100 Years, directed by Robert Rodriguez, written and starring John Malkovich. It was made in 2015, but will not be released until 2115. And it's supposed to match the time of what it takes a bottle of Louis the 13th cognac to be aged until it's released. So yeah, 100 years. So we'll be long. Yeah, so we'll be long. But everybody
involved. He'll be long gone. He won't even see how that fucking movie plays out.
Yeah,
that's so weird, dude. I want to live to 2115 now.
Yeah, just see this little film.
Dang. You know what? That gets me thinking. We should make a time capsule movie that just doesn't get released.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really like, honestly, I'm super interested in it. And then like I'm also looking at this on Wikipedia. Even Pharrell Williams did a 100 Year song in collaboration with this movie too, and that'll be released in 100 years.
Shit,
Jesus.
What kind of movie would that even be? You know what I mean? Like
no idea. Like there's nothing for the premise, nothing, and like and like I think it's. Like, I don't want to talk down to the movie because it might just be like a bit of a novelty thing. Maybe the plot's not all that interesting, but still, like, that's still like a fun thing that you can do. Especially like you don't expect like a filmmaker, like an A-list actor making a movie and not having it get released just for that sake, just having it wait 100 years. Just like it's kind of like this like this kind of undiscoverable treasure. Like I don't know how to quite explain it, but it just seems.
No, I get it. Yeah. I think Robert Rodriguez is in an interesting place because he's very ambitious, even still to this day. You know, he's still working on projects. He's still, like gathering inspiration from a bunch of places. But I think he's not pressured. Like he doesn't even pressure himself to make more movies. He pumps them out when he can and does all of these weird secret projects on the side. And it's funny that you bring up this project because I really want to talk about Red 11 because that's like a modern, I don't want to say novelty, but it's like a modern example of how filmmakers can really, like, if they can get out of their own way, they can make a movie now, like you don't need all this experience. You don't need a crazy budget. You don't need a shitload of crew members. You just need yourself, camera, actors, and maybe a couple grand, Yeah. So, I mean, do you mind if I just kind of talk to you a little bit about it?
Go for it.
All right. So not to like dump exposition. So I'm going to try and just keep this as informative as I can. But essentially Red 11 is a movie that he shot, I want to say in like 2019. So it wasn't even that long ago, but it was pre-pandemic. So that, that should be said is that it's a little harder now because there are restrictions. And if you are being safe, you should have everybody get tested, vaccinated, But in his case, he wanted to kind of replicate the process of making El Mariachi by making another movie for $7,000. But this time it was going to be shot on digital, which means that the budget is much more flexible, because shooting a movie for $7,000 now is much easier. So actually, I can't remember fully how much of the budget went to what. But the movie Red 11 was actually conspired at the same time that El Mariachi was, because it was based on it wasn't a hospital, it was like a research facility that he like put himself through.
That's how he got the funding for the movie. Yeah, because he became a lab rat for a month.
Precisely, right. So he took the story of being a human lab rat and made it a feature film. And I think he didn't write the script back in like 1993, but he did make like an outline and a premise for it, for like, just in case he ever made it, you know. And I think that's kind of cool, because like having a thing on like the back burner of like all these movies, like this feature that I'm writing right now that I'm not going to talk about yet, I've had that on the back burner for like 3 years. So, you know, it was just an idea in my notes, and he just decided to make it. So yeah, it's like another good story for like modern day filmmakers. Like, hey, I'm going to go make this movie for $7,000. You can go make a movie for $7,000 literally right now, probably less. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to show you how I can do it. And yeah, and like, okay, so getting into the actual movie, the movie itself is nothing special. But I do think, once again, that vibe of we had fun making this movie is very much present in this, you know, versus a modern day like Hollywood style movie where it's like multi-million dollar, you know, people probably still have fun making those, but it's not this raw, you know, unhinged student drive to go make something and have fun and laugh with your friends and, you know, cast your friends and bring them as crew members, you know, like it has that. And I don't think that most films carry that. And yeah, and like there's a documentary on it as well. I think it's like 4 or 5 parts, but it breaks down like the writing process, the lighting process, the shooting process, the casting process, the editing process, the fact that he motivated his crew by making a trailer with what he already shot and then playing it on like day 14 of shooting or whatever, or day 7 of shooting. That like boosted cast morale like tenfold, you know, and everyone was like, wow, like, you know, this is the type of movie that we're making. Got it. You know, like this is, you know, and then everybody was on the same page, and then they were able to like shoot the more complicated stuff while being on the same page with each other. And I think that it's really, it's a good story to take away, you know, like it's go make your damn movie, you know, like here's an example of how to be inspired by somebody else doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, and that honestly, I got to go watch Red 11, but I think that's what makes him great, is that he still is willing to be like that scrappy filmmaker that kind of got him going. Because I think when you have like people that have become established filmmakers, they feel like they need to keep like at that scale, like they need to keep like at like the 10 million, the $100 million budgets, and like so. And I get that, like they want to continuously be ambitious, but I think it becomes less fun for them in the sense because they just like you're dealing with a lot more stress that like if this thing flops, like it can damage careers. Like you're dealing with a lot more stakes when like you're dealing with that like millions and millions of dollars. And like while you don't want that in your in the forefront of your mind when you're like a filmmaker, it is there, sadly. So like that's why, like, you know, people tend to get really stressed out. Like there's so many burnout stories that I've heard, like even with like why am I blanking on their names? He did like Creep. I'm blanking on their, like it's like these two brothers. One of them's in the league. I'm blanking on their names. they did mumblecore films like The Puffy Chair, like other names.
Now I'm just kind of resorting to like which brothers I know. So like Coen brothers, Duffer brothers.
No.
Yeah, it's not either of them.
It'll come. Actually, I'll look it up real quick. But what? The Puffy Chair. Sorry, just give me a sec.
You're good.
Okay, Duplass brothers. Sorry.
Duplass. That's right. Okay.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to think of. Okay, because I remember watching a video about Mark Duplass, and he's like, very much like in a Robert Rodriguez sense, making these very scrappy, like $1,000, $5,000 movies. And then finally, him and his brother were able to make this like, okay, multi-million-dollar indie film. Like he's got movie stars, and he was just like, we thought we were gonna quit filmmaking. Like we were burnt out, like just because we were working at that scale. And I think he did the smart move, like Robert Rodriguez. He has no problem taking a step back, kind of going back to his roots, doing what they were able to do on their own. Mm-hmm. But I think some filmmakers kind of forget that. Like I always think about like Josh Trank, because I have a feeling he's a good filmmaker, but he has a hard time dealing with burnout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, burnout is such a bitch. And I feel like I've experienced burnout, especially this past year. It has been such a nightmare creatively. Like I've I don't want to say that I haven't made anything, but struggling with just a lot of things. Like the world is trying to reignite itself, and I feel like I was trying to do the same thing in my like creative sense as I'm trying to reignite everything, and coming off a movie that took much longer to produce than it actually should have, just because of the pandemic, has like, I don't know, really put a weight on everything. Mm-hmm. And I do think that, yeah, it is very admirable when a filmmaker is able to step back from the multi-million-dollar budgets and just be like, okay, I'm going to do me. I'm going to I have this, movie that I've kept in my back pocket for like this amount of long, and it doesn't need a shitload of money to be made. I'm just going to make it for $5,000-$7,000 and just go from there. And like the great thing about these A-list directors is they probably have like shitloads of cash that they don't use, right? Or just they have probably a very big savings. So, they're able to kind of just be like, okay, I'm going to take $7,000 from this, make a movie out of it. And I would love to be that type of director, the one that's like, that doesn't need a shitload of money to make a movie. I think it's more just like, they can kind of just do whatever, and like with very little resources, they kind of just like, Robert Rodriguez shot Red 11 in his office, his Troublemaker Studios office, because that's the location he had. Going back to what we said in the beginning of the podcast about like, oh, if you have access to, piano lessons, make a movie about that. That's the kind of the whole thing, is that he shaped this office into a hospital, and that's, I don't know. It's just, it's really cool to see what filmmakers do without the resource of a shitload of money, because what's left? Your creativity and the resources you have lying around. Something's got to give. Otherwise, the movie's not going to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would even also say that just get your directorial debut out of the way, if that makes sense as well. Because yeah. I feel like when it comes to like a Tarantino, like when your first feature is like gold, that's such a fucking rarity. And I don't think that should happen. That's kind of like, I feel like that's like a dangerous route, because you don't want to start out on top. And like, that's kind of not normal. Like, I think the more appropriate route is something like the Duplasses, where they make like 3 features before they kind of get something really higher scale. Same thing with Spike Lee. He did he made 3 features before he did Do the Right Thing. I think it's just, because you want that experience to be able to okay, see a film beginning to end. You're able to work with actors well, you can communicate well. But even if it, and like, but the thing is that you want to get your mistakes out of the way. You could still do that with shorts, but I don't think anybody would want to really provide any funding for a feature if like you haven't made a feature already. Right? I'm talking about like significant funding. Like it's a rarity. Like another famous filmmaker recently that came up big off just shorts is Ryan Coogler. And I think like, while a great filmmaker, it's just he is like a one of a kind, the one guy that was just like that got picked. Yes,
yeah.
he's a great, without question, he's a great filmmaker, but he was picked. He worked hard, but it's one of those things. Like, I just don't think that should be like the go-to route. I think just making something tangible that's easy, that could be like you can make on your own. Make a Clerks, make an El Mariachi, make a Corrupted Youth. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, of course I've seen Corrupted Youth. Are you kidding me? I've been meaning to do a rewatch on that. It's funny because I think before we started the podcast, you asked me if there were any night scenes that I had shot. And I don't think the answer was yes, but my mind went to Corrupted Youth thinking that I was on that set for some reason. But I was like, that was packed full of night scenes. Mm-hmm. And they were real night scenes, like they weren't day for night. So I don't know, just something to kind of think about is, I might watch Corrupted Youth if I have some time today.
Yeah, it's just like, I feel like it's just tongue in cheek for us, just because we'll get a good laugh out of it. But
for sure.
But like Spencer, we love you, man.
Yeah, shout out to Spencer. We love you.
Yeah.
Please make another Corrupted Youth like style film, please.
Yeah, but even then, I feel like we've made our fair share of mistakes, and I'm okay with that. Yeah.
One thing's for sure: when I make my first feature, you're gonna be there for it. Damn it. Yeah, it's either going to be my thesis or, the thing that I immediately do after my thesis. Did we want to say anything else about Robert Rodriguez? I think it's interesting too, because hold on. So going back to when he made Red 11, right? Like when he made El Mariachi, there was no guarantee of making his money back. Although he did say that he was going to sell it to the Spanish market and claim that it was like made for more than it was so that he could make like 30 grand or some shit, which kind of cool. Obviously you can't do that nowadays. But making Red 11, right? He's already got an established name. So as much as filmmaking should never, ever, 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 ever be about the money, I can't imagine that he didn't make like 50 to 100 grand at least after releasing it, because it's available on video on demand. Like I paid to see it, obviously. I think it's like $5 on Amazon or something like that. But the point is, there's no doubt in my mind that he made his money back tenfold after releasing that. So, if you want to get more budget with an established name, like just make a scrappy film for $5 grand and there you go. You know what I mean? Like, and then just be like, oh, look what I can do, guys. Like, this is a great, I don't know. I definitely don't think that's where his head was at, but I just think that it's very interesting because, say you did that and then now you have $300,000, that's your next budget, and now you can do even more crazy shit that like maybe you couldn't afford. So.
Yeah. And I think that's a good note to end on. Like we're coming up on the hour, but I think just Robert Rodriguez, like he is like, I think he's honestly one of the most grounded filmmakers, like without question, like in terms of like him being like really in touch with the craft, like in the sense of like how resourceful he can be. He has no problem like going to like literally the lowest of low budgets to like $100 million doing like Alita battles, like what is that? Alita? Is that the
Alita Battle Angel? Yeah,
Alita Battle Angel. That's what I'm thinking. I think that was like 120 million.
That probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. Yeah, I think Robert is not afraid to make a huge ass like multi-million-dollar film. He's very quite literally on both ends of the spectrum. He has made a movie for fucking nothing and everything, in terms of budget. So Yeah, just something to take away from that.
Yeah, even like, and also like in the fact that he did it late in his career, that he like the fact that like he did both, like he did both of those and essentially within a year or two time, like made about Alita Battlestar and then made Red 11, like, you know, a film for 120 million and then a film for $7 grand.
Yep.
So
yep, and that probably what's it called, like scratched a lot of heads, like turned a lot of heads, raised a lot of eyebrows, you know. And I think I definitely, there is so much to be said from that. I feel like I don't want to become another Robert Rodriguez, but I do think that I admire that scrappy aspect of like work with what you have and really just turn heads with like the weird way that you make movies, you know. Discover your method of making movies, you know, because it's not going to be the same as everybody else.
all right, that's fair. All right, I think we'll just end it right there. But thanks for coming on again. We'll do it again. Robert Rodriguez, you're the fucking man. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep doing interviews, making movies, weird projects. I'll watch it.
Keep inspiring the youth.
All right. All right, dude.
Take care.
Take
man.
it easy, man. All right. Be safe. Cheers.
Bye.